I would like you to close your eyes for a moment. Close your eyes and imagine. You sit in a dark wagon. There is only a little light coming in one of the small windows, and you think, as long as I can see the names of the stations in Hungarian, I can hope that we are taken to the inner part of Hungary. It's very crowded in the wagon. You sit next to your mother and father and your sister and feel a little bit of comfort that you are together, but at the same time you are very worried what's going to happen. It's warm. The air gets more and more heavy, and the temperature rises in the wagon, and the train goes, stops, starts again, it stops. It's evening, it's morning, it's evening, it's morning. There is no more water. You ask for water, nobody will give you water. And it's evening and it's morning. Suddenly one evening the train stops, and when you look at the little window you can see the name of the station in a different language. You try to read it, Auswitsch. It's first later, you know, that means Auschwitz. Jag heter Hédi och jag är född långt härifrån, i Rumänien. Transylvanien heter det området. Har ni hört om Transylvanien? Ja.
Min morfar är därifrån.
Din morfar är därifrån. Har ni hört något mer om Transylvanien? Du, vad har du hört?
Dracula kommer därifrån.
Dracula kommer därifrån, precis. Så som jag berättade för er så föddes jag i den här lilla staden. Och jag var äldsta barnet i en judisk familj. Min pappa gick på morgonen till arbetet som alla pappor gör. Och mamma gick till torget för att handla. Men vet ni, när jag var ungefär lika gammal som ni, då hörde jag plötsligt på radio en elak röst som röt mycket grymt. Han skrek. Och så var det andra som ropade i kör efter honom. Och jag tänkte, det där låter så väldigt, väldigt skrämmande. Vad kan det vara? Så jag frågade mamma, vad är det för någonting? Och då sa mamma, ja, det är bara en elak man i Tyskland. Och Tyskland är så långt borta, det ska vi inte bry oss om. Och stängde av radion. Förstår ni vem det var? Säg det. Precis. Och då var jag lika gammal som ni. Och då sa mamma, bry dig inte om det, det är så långt borta. Så jag brydde mig inte om det och fortsatte. Då gick jag redan i skolan. There were rumors that there is a war coming up. I got afraid, and I was hoping that there will be no war, because in case of war, my father will be asked to join the army, and there is nothing worse that could happen, I thought at that time. But shortly afterwards, the papers wrote that there will be no war because Hitler and Chamberlain have signed a treaty and we will live in peace all our lives. And the autumn came and school started. School always started the 1st of September in Romania. And on my way to school, I meet a friend. She says, war broke out. No, I didn't want to believe her. But she told me that it was true. She heard it on the radio. At 5 o'clock this morning, the German troops entered into Poland. So I decided to carve the date, the 1st of September 1939, into the gate where I lived, because I thought it will be nice to be able to show my children that's the date when the war broke out, and then I will carve the date when the war ends, so the children should see when the war was in Europe. But when the war ended, I was not there any longer, and I don't think there was any gate to carve anything. So I think now I will ask Martin to tell, because at that time I was about 14, and I think Martin will tell how life was for him until the age of 14.
Well, first of all, let me thank you to have me here. I'm very glad for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm doing this for the first time really in a school. As you have already heard from your teacher, I'm Austrian. I was born in 1944. That's the last year of the Second World War. And my father was a rather high-ranking SS and Gestapo officer serving in the SD Sicherheitsdienst. Now, let me tell you maybe something about the family of my father's side. They came from the Untersteiermark, which is nowadays Slovenia, which was always a border region, you know, with German-speaking people living there and Slovenes living there. And this probably explains, it doesn't excuse by all means, but it explains why especially people from this region, including my own family, became so nationalistic and in the end became Nazis. Because they felt threatened, you know, living together with the Slovenes, the Germans. So they didn't feel like Austrians. Even in the last century it already started, but they always felt like great Germans. So my father was born in this region. My grandfather was a lawyer down there. My father became a lawyer. He studied in Graz. He joined a Burschenschaft, you know, it's one of these institutions where students fight duels and then they have these scars on the face, which even nowadays is going on less than it was in those days. And it's always these Burschenschaften, you know, even nowadays, they're always pro-Nazi, they're very nationalistic. And so my father immediately came into this kind of milieu. So my father joined the party and the SS in 1931, you know, which was of course illegal at that time. and he was imprisoned in 1937 in Austria, because at that time, the Nazi Party was illegal. And after 1938, quite understandably, being one of the very first who had joined the party, he became right away a rather famous man in the Gestapo.
I september 1940 kom ungrarna in i Rumänien. Så jag gick i rumänsk skola dagen innan och dagen därpå var det ungersk skola. Det var september. Men Hitler har bestämt sig att döda alla judarna. Vi visste inte då, vi vet det idag. Och i vilket land han gick in så var det första han gjorde att han samlade ihop judarna och dödade dem. Och nu fanns det ett land, Ungern, där Hitler visste att det finns många judar. Det fanns lika många judar i Ungern som människor i Stockholm. 800 000. Och då tänkte han, jag måste ha de här 800 000 judarna. Jag saknar dem i mina böcker där jag skriver upp att så många judar fick dö i Polen, så många judar fick dö i Tjeckoslovakien, så många judar i de andra länderna. Jag vill ha de här 800 000 judarna ifrån Ungern. Nu har ni fått Transylvanien, ge mig judarna, sa Hitler. Och till en början ville inte ungrarna göra det. Men sen fanns det elaka ungrare också. Pilkorsar. Har ni hört talas om pilkorsar? Nej. Det var som SS i Tyskland. Det var pilkorsar i Ungern. Och de tyckte det är bara bra om judarna blir dödade. Vi vill inte ha några judar i Ungern. Så att de släppte in tyskarna. Så att en morgon när jag vaknar, det var den 19 mars 1944. Då finns 2 SS-män i vår stad. Och då blev vi rädda. Vad kommer det hända med oss? Och den ena SS-mannen kom och knackade på vår dörr och sa: ni har ett så stort hus här. Jag vill att ni ska ge mig 2 rum, för jag vill bo här. Ja visst, sa vi. Så att vi lämnade vardagsrummet och ytterligare ett rum så att SS-mannen skulle flytta in. Och han bodde där. Och vi var kvar då i sovrummet och försökte vara tysta som möss, för vi var rädda för honom. Men han var hövlig och artig och hälsade. Och till slut så gick pappa fram till honom och frågade: vad ska det bli med oss? Vi har hört att tyskar är grymma mot judar. Nej men min herre, sa han. Vad tror ni egentligen? Vi är civiliserade människor.
I don't really know too much about his personal history, but I'm quite sure that he was a war criminal in every sense. He was sent to the front in 1944, and he served in a Einsatzkommando, which were sort of cleaning up, operations behind the front, especially catching the last remnants of the Jewish population. This was in Slovakia at that time in 1944, and sending them to the concentration camps. Now, I was born in 1944, as I said, so I never knew my father, not really consciously, because he was killed in 1947 when he was on the flight. He was looked after by the Allies as a war criminal, and he wanted to take the quite traditional way to Rome, where there were some priests, helping the Nazis to escape to Latin America. And he was on his way to Rome, and he had to go across the border to Italy, and he took a guide because he didn't know his way. And this guide, a young man, shot him from behind because he thought that this was a war criminal, which was quite right, and he's probably carrying a lot of money on him, which was also right. Of course, the man was caught immediately. But so I didn't know personally my father, but I was brought up by his mother, his father, my grandparents, and also in my mother's home. She remarried, and my stepfather was also, a Nazi, not high-ranking, but in his outline and his thinking. So I was really brought up in this kind of thinking, in this milieu, and I was told until, I left home, that was the right way, and we don't want to have anything to do with Jews, we don't want to have anything to do with gypsies. These are really sub-people, Untermenschen. Please never marry a Jew, please never talk to Jews, they are the evil of the world. I cannot tell you exactly when and how I moved away from this kind of thinking. This is not a point where you suddenly understand that this is all wrong and all shit what your parents and grandparents have been telling you. But this is a rather slow, I would say a slow process.
Have you been able to forgive your father?
To forgive my father?
Yeah. For what he did?
No, I think, and the reason is because I never really talked to him, because as I said, that he was killed in 47 when I was not yet 3 years old, so I never consciously, talked to him. And I do have the feeling that that I've missed the discussion, and therefore, I cannot say that I ever forgave him, And this is not very easy for me, because I would feel better, if I would have discussed it. I could have probably hated him, openly, shouted at him, but I missed all that, and therefore, no, I cannot say that I forgave him.
Listen, everybody. The Jews will have to leave their homes. They have to take with them as much as they can. Tomorrow, the gendarmes, the Hungarian country police will come and pick you up to take you to the ghetto. We have made a ghetto in the north part of the city, and all the Jews will have to live there. Think a moment. Somebody's telling you, from tomorrow on, you are not allowed to live in your house. You have to leave your home. You have to leave your things, your books, everything you love. Maybe you have a little pet. You have to leave it and go away. Mother started to pack, and I went around the house to say goodbye to everything I loved. I went out into the garden. We had a watchdog. I petted him, and I was hoping that the neighbor will take care of him. I came back into the house. I went to the picture of my grandparents on the wall and asked them, please, take care of the house until we'll be back, because I'm sure we'll be back soon. This thing to get used. You get used to things that are good, and you get used to things that are bad, and it's very dangerous. Because once again, there is something that you don't like, if you protest, maybe you can change it. But if you say, well, it's not so bad, maybe it will change. The next day, you have something again that you don't like, and it's worse. And it grows, and it grows, and it grows, until you cannot change it any longer.
Elohim elasois zaberu
May 1944, when I could hear the drummer on the corner. Listen, all people. Everybody has to pack 20 kilos. And tomorrow morning, you will have to stand in front of your gate, prepared to be taken away. Where to? Nobody knows. We looked to each other. My mother started to cry and said, "What's going to happen? The Germans hate us. They will kill us." "No," I said. "Why should they kill us? We haven't done anything. I'm sure they want to take us into the inner part of Hungary. It's a war going on. The Hungarian men are out at the frontier. And I'm sure they want the Jews to help the Hungarian women to do the work in the fields. So you will see that we are taken to the inner part of Hungary." "Yes," my mother said, "of course. Because you never want to believe in the worst. You always believe the person who tells you that it can't be that bad." In the morning, I took my sack and went out to the street, and there was a big noise, people running out and in the house, children crying, dogs barking, and the gendarmes shouting that everybody should stand up. They wanted us in lines of 5, so they should be able to count us. And it took some time until this has been done. But still, nothing happened, so we were standing there in the street the whole day. It was late in the afternoon when the commander came and opened the gates of the ghetto and told us, "Please, get going." The houses were dark along the streets, the blinds drawn. Not one person out of our former neighbors opened the window to wave goodbye or said a word. Nobody cared that we were taken away. Inhabitants of the little town who lived close by, we children played together. Our mothers walked into the kitchen of each other, borrowing sugar and salt. Our fathers talked to each other, and now they were gone, all. We were alone in the streets. And walked away to the station where box carts, wagons, waited with a sign for 8 horses. They asked us to enter these wagons and counted 20, 50, 75, 98, 100. Stop. And at the same moment, the doors open with a bang, and you can hear a big noise, German voices shouting, raus, get out, schnell, quick, dogs barking, and SS coming with their batons, hitting people, quick, men to the right, women to the left. Do it quickly, get out of here, leave everything you brought with you, just quickly. My father and I stopped back for a moment. We wanted to know, where did we come? Where are we? And asked one of the men in striped clothes, where are we? And he answered, after looking around, that there is no German. Vernichtungslager. Extermination camp. Then I knew. But I didn't have time to talk to my father. I said, hurry, hurry, they are hitting, and ran after my mother and left my father joining the group of men. I took my mother under her arm. My sister was on the other side, and we walked towards a barbed wire fence where an elegant SS was standing with his baton, just like a god from the German mythology, Wotan. Right, left. When our row got there, he pointed to my mother, right, to my sister and me, left. We want to be together. They're my children, my mother said. You can take the bus. They can walk. And pointed impatiently to the next row. Water, my mother said. Please, let me have some water. You'll have coffee when you get there, he said. When my mother got there, and the faucet opened, it was gas. Isn't it strange that not even we wanted to believe? How can you believe that such evil exists? And how can we ask today that people should believe? But you have to believe. And I'm happy that you are here to tell everybody that it is true, that this evil has existed. I think I stop again now, please.
Now, when I hear what Hédi tells you, I mean, I think I share your feeling that we cannot understand, and it's hard for us to believe that man does this to man, you know. But still, of course, I'm also a historian, and I've studied this, and I've talked to many people like Hédi, you know, and I know that unfortunately this is the truth. Now, there's one question for me, which for me personally was always very important, is that as I've said, you know, my parents' generation, for me, in my experience, they were loving people, although I know, and I know now, that they were criminals, you know. But what is for me the most important question is that what made them become like this? What made them do it? And even more important, the question, would I, in their position, have chosen a different path? And I'm afraid, you know, that I cannot be sure, you know, under the same circumstances, where they were brought up, under the same circumstances, you know, the same influence that lived under, you know, the ideology. And this is not excusing them at all, But it's just, I think it's a very, very important question, which every one of us has to ask himself, would we have done the same, or would we have resisted, would we take another path? So if you live in a family like that, if you live in a surrounding like that, there comes a day, of course, when you have to take a decision. You have to take a decision and you say, okay, enough is enough. And I think you have to cut the ties. You have to cut your roots, which I did when I was a student, I think 22 or 23. And I just told my grandparents, well, my grandfather was not alive anymore, but my grandmother was, and my uncle was. I told them that I don't want to have anything to do with them anymore, and that's the end. And I kept this word. And I can't say that I'm very proud of it, because she was an old woman. She was an evil woman, if you want, yes? But she was a loving grandmother to me, and I was sort of the only thing she had, really, because I was the only son of her son who had been murdered, And that really, if you want to put it dramatically and pathetically, really broke her heart, But I think that you have to take this decision, because otherwise, you will never be able, to find your own way, as every one of us has to find. Because even today, as we know, and I don't think it's only in Austria, there is this kind of a feeling, this kind of a thinking, nationalism, racism, the hatred of strangers, the hatred of people dark, or different names, or different religion, or whatever. This is, I'm afraid, very much on the upsurge. This is very much true for Austria. This is very much true for Germany, as you all know. So I think every one of us, has to take a decision, and we have to say, no, here is a point, where I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore, and I'm going another way.
Ich lach, ich bin die Mama, und welche Welt ich bin. Oi, Mama, bin ich verliebt. Oi, oi, Mama, bin ich verliebt. Will ich oi, oi, Mama, bin ich verliebt.
Småningom, jag kom till Sverige med Röda Kors och jag låg 3 år på sanatorium här. Just de gjorde faktiskt. Tacka Sverige att jag blivit en människa för mig, annars jag skulle aldrig klara mig. Och här, man lever vidare. Man fick gifta sig med en man efter 3 år. Jag låg på sanatorium. Vi hade mycket lyckliga äktenskap. Och så fick vi ett barn. Och från barn blev barnbarn. Och det lever vi vidare. Det är den som ger styrka att man ska kunna leva vidare. Men innerst inne man är totalt nedbruten. Men ändå, man vill inte visa och man vill inte klaga. Det hjälper inte. Bara man måste kämpa med sig själv. Och så går livet vidare, annars det går inte.
Så det är inte min förtjänst det som det är, utan det är ni alla som kommer och gör det hela som det är. Och jag hoppas att ni fortsätter och kommer 10 år och 10 år och 10 år. På torsdag firar vi inte bara Purim utan 10 år. För att förra hösten, Café 84 bildades 1984. Förra året var det 10 år. Och då sa de på rådfästet, vi kan inte ha en fest i december och så igen till Purim. Vi firar dubbelt i april, i mars. Så att det är 10-årsfest. Och sen en person till som jag vill dela blommorna med om jag får, utan vilken faktiskt inte kan finnas med.